It's 10:15 in Melbourne, Australia. I'd like to welcome Bill Turner, who's in New Zealand, and it's 12:15 in New Zealand, a couple of hours ahead, and we won't say the advancements in anything else, will we, Bill? Anyway, we hope for Mick Holt in Queensland to come on shortly. Mick's up in Queensland, that's another time zone, and he's one that doesn't have to worry about the winters, because it doesn't happen. Kevin Arnott is supposed to join us, but Kevin has been having problems with communications through Skype and through Zoom. So if he comes on, fantastic. If not, we'll go back and welcome Bill and when Mike comes on, we'll welcome Mike. So good afternoon and good morning from me.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you for inviting me onto your show.
Very, very welcome. In fact, you're more than welcome. You're the man with the knowledge. So we're going to talk about when people go to court and the court don't really want to handle it because they've created their own identification and they've created their own jurisdiction by the flag. And now of course the courts then don't and can't hear this, so they'll trick people into telling this in one court and another court at the end of the day. So what do you reckon is really happening there, Bill?
Well, the problem is to get jurisdiction in any court, they must have a name and address. They cannot get jurisdiction unless they have those two simple things. And it's the joining of the name, Barry, that where the problem comes in. Once you take the name of the father, you have taken the name of that deceased estate, which is under administration. Okay, the first, or the Christian names, in my case, William Henry, that was the only names I was given when I was born. But then I got birthed into the system, B-E-R-T-H-E-D, birthed into the system. And if I take that name, then I've docked into there, and I'll get thrown into the dock when I go to court. So now with the simple cases, once they have you stepping up, in court and answering to that surname, now you've joined the parties, you've joined the living and the dead together, and now they can proceed because they do have jurisdiction. Now, in first case, normally what will happen when you go to court, Barry, is that you will have to turn up and they say, are you Mr. Turner? They always say Mr. Turner because they're talking about an entity that you can't see is all capitalized. So Mr. suffices in the court to give them that jurisdiction. Now, if you look on the board outside the court, it'll always be the surname first, normally in capital letters, but they'll do all sorts of things, and then you'll have the Christian names after that, or Jewish names if you're Jewish. But the first thing that happens is that you have to answer to that name. Now and it's normally only a JP or a very minor magistrate, and Magi being a magician, magistrate, all he needs to do is make sure that they have a trustee for that trust who is going to pay the bill. So once they have that, they then order a birth certificate, and then they put that birth certificate out onto the stock market, and start trading, and it goes out as a 90-day bond. Now, when you get called back 3 months later for the next one, if it's more than just a little traffic one or that sort of thing, the first one, they're only treating you summarily under the Summary Proceedings Act. So they treat you summarily, and which is rushing you to justice. So the idea is if you've secured your person, which is the surname, on the PPSR, then you send notice to them of that security on the PPSR. They won't proceed, Barry.
Oh, just that PPSS alone. Well, and also, of course, the flag, if you put the jurisdiction of the flag on, that really turns the place into turmoil, because they really stuff. And producing your own ID, which states that the surname is the deceased estate at law, and your name now is John Doe, or sorry, correction, John Michael, and not Doe is in brackets. So you have, if they ask for identification, well, then you've got it. So between the two, creating the jurisdiction, and this whole has to be done. This is very important. I think, Bill, you probably agree with me. There's not much point just turning up there on the day with no paperwork. So you put the paperwork in to say, make that statement, I'm here as principal on behalf of, and there's a copy of my ID, lodge that. And if you're smart enough, I find here in Australia now that I've seen it happen, put the flag in as well. And we've had 3 successful cases with the ID where people produced their ID and they weren't going to appear on behalf of the deceased estate at law, or that dead entity or surname. Sorry?
As principal?
As the principal, yeah, for the principal for the surname, right? Not appearing as the surname. And that's worked 3 times now, Western Australia and somewhere up in Queensland. And
pleased you used John Doe, Barry. You highlighted exactly what will happen if you use John Doe. It's going to cost you dough. I told you before, I love computers. You only punch the information in once.
I know. It's people are the problem, you know. You try to tell them, and they always remind me when there's a lot of people who seem to go to every meeting they can find, and they remind me of little blackbirds, or not blackbirds, crows in a nest with a mouth's beaks opening, big more information. They ask the same questions they've asked last week, and it just goes in, and it just gives them a greater memory of the questions they were and the answers. Then they go and ask them at the next meeting. But when it actually comes to doing something, creating their own ID, creating their own identity, it just goes by the wayside. So
it's a 4-letter word: fear. Fear. And look, we have to be accepting of that a lot of people live so much in fear that which we used to do as well, Barry. Gosh, man, I was terrified of lawyers until I exposed them, and the more you expose them, the less fear you have, and the more power you have over them.
That's exactly right. And what's happening and has been happening, and it's going to stop now, is these people do whatever they like to you. They've been hoodwinking. I call it the Tooth Fairy and Father Christmas. They've been doing that for so long, we actually believe it. It's okay. Bill has just taken a little leave to go outside for a few moments. He doesn't smoke, so he's going to get a cup of tea, I think. So this young lady who's Bill's been helping, and she's created her own ID. So back to you. What your name is?
My Australian name is Monica Eastick because I'm half Australian, but my New Zealand name is now Whaia Monica.
So you created your own ID then?
Yeah, and it's based on the 1835 He Whakaputanga o Te Rangatiratanga o Nuterini, which was an agreement between the Pākehā and the Māori of our country that basically gave the Māori Tino Rangatiratanga, which is the Māori chiefs, who abide by tikanga, which is Māori law and ethical conduct. Basically, it gives us rights, and so we put diplomatic immunity down the bottom because in our country at the moment, a lot of the Māoris are getting picked on, and we have the highest rates of Māori in prison. So we've got 64% of our Māori women are in prisons, which is the highest in the world. We also suffer from the state bullying and like the government ministerial departments that steal our babies. And so basically this is a really good card. It helps Māoris learn about their rights, and it's we have these rights already. Māori do. We have rights, but a lot of our people aren't aware of those rights.
Well, that's the same everywhere. Most people they've lost their rights. They don't believe they have any, and if you don't believe you have rights, you don't have rights. Thanks
for this opportunity to speak about this. We launched these cards on the 6th of February this year up at Waitangi. And Waitangi is a gathering where Māori people come.
Yes, I know. I've been in New Zealand, yes.
Yeah, and we had the chief of police there, and we had all these government police and various police and army and militants, and they took photos of this card, and it works.
Oh yeah, it does work. When you create your own identity and you move out of the fiction system, they can't touch you because you're using your given names, and you're only going to be a principal for the surname. To have a quick break because Mike up in Queensland, Mike Holt in Queensland, which has his own broadcast up there on the blog, or I forget what you call it. He correct me in a minute. I'd like to introduce Mick Holt in Queensland, which is in the land who doesn't have winter, to poor old Bill down there in New Zealand, and the other side of the world, which when the world changes time, they're the first to do it. So they're ahead in a lot of ways, and Bill. So I'd like to introduce Bill and Mick together so they can say hi to each other. Go for it, guys.
Hi, Mick. How are you?
G'day, Bill. Mike Holt here, the bloody Aussie battler, and a few other things I've been called. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. Great to see you on board.
Yeah, we've crossed paths, but we've never actually spoken before, so it's good to meet you at long last.
Thank you. Same.
And Barry, of course, we know each other.
Yeah. We've been on the track for a while. Yeah, we're catching up. Well, basically, the idea probably it's a good time now. We've got the three different, two different countries and two different states, and both states here in in Australia are quite far apart. Mick, as I said, lives up in the nice tropical area, and I live in the place that does have winter, but our winter only maybe 18 degrees.
Times a day.
It's not too bad. Depends on the time of day and the time of the year, of course. But Bill and I were just talking about how the courts abuse and how they treat people, and what really is very annoying. Somebody turns up at court for some. I don't want to get involved in criminal stuff. That's a whole new ball game. But in trivial stuff, mostly traffic, where they make money, and how they treat people. They turn up there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they don't hear the case till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is disgraceful and a total disregard for people's as human beings. They just treat you as rubbish. And what we're just talking about, Mike, was the paperwork that goes into court is very important first, and as you go there as principal. So if you've got any questions on that, just bring them up, and somebody will answer them, I'm sure.
Well, I published an article a couple of weeks ago about how the local councils have no authority to do what they're doing. And yesterday I edited that article and I put in something that everybody can use when they walk into the court to talk to the plaintiff. Now, that's the person bringing the charges. And I actually got this from, what's his name, O'Dwyer? No, O'Brien.
Yeah, Bill.
Darryl O'Brien.
Darryl O'Brien. Well, that's okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Darryl's a good man.
Bill, he comes up with some great stuff. Anyway, he's put these two questions, and basically you're asking them, can you produce evidence that you have quorum juris authority going back to the Constitution to bring these charges? And of course they can't. No. And once you do that, there is no case.
That's correct.
If you want to go onto my website at cirnow.com.au, and just up near the top, you'll see local councils have no authority. Just read that article and then use that in court if you must. Yeah. These courts have no authority whatsoever unless they are acting under our Constitution. Yeah. Now, what about in New Zealand, mate? Do you have any constitution there?
No, and I'm about to do a video on Constitution, which will probably shock you. But look, what the courts do, they have actors. They need actors. They need someone to step up as a plaintiff and someone to step up as a defendant. Now, they're both fictions. So if you hop up as defendant, and they ask you, are you the defendant? Well, no, I'm not. I'm a living man. But unless you accept that role of defendant, they can't proceed. So you accept the role of defendant, and then you're assuming that someone is pressing charges against you, but that is also a fiction. So you can throw out any court case if there is a fictitious plaintiff.
Right.
So the idea is to, by doing your paperwork, and Barry put some good paperwork to me before, which I thought was very good, Barry. But if you wrote back to them and said, if you should be forced to appear in court, you will demand that the plaintiff appears.
Correct.
Okay.
That is our right under the law.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one, because someone actually, this guy's, I think we may all know him. He's having problems with the bank and the land, and because the bank wanted, because it's gone up to about $70 million worth of property they wanted, so they've been playing games with him. But he asked the court, the judge or the magistrate, to the definition of complainant, and he couldn't do it, and he asked the prosecution the same question. They couldn't do it, so he gave them the true explanation, and of course that was the end of the case. It just went out the door.
Yeah, well, what most people don't realize, the judge is only there as an adjudicator. It's nothing to do with him. He's supposed to act impartially. It's the person bringing the charges that is the problem, and so all questions should be addressed to him or her. And but like if you have secured the debtor or secured the creditor on the PPSR, which I recommend everyone do, and you give that to the prosecutor and say, if you proceed, your wife's credit card or your husband's credit card's going to have a lien against it, you're going to get down to the money machine and not get any money, they do not proceed, I can assure you.
Okay, well, I'll have to talk to Barry about that a bit more, because I've been meaning to, but I just haven't had time.
Yeah.
I've been very busy writing an affidavit for somebody who's in prison. Here's a hypothetical question. What if you get a court order addressed to you, but it's not actually to you, they use your nickname? Is it legal or not?
Go on, Bill. You can handle this one, Bill.
Everything is an invitation to contract. Okay, so you will find in any letter or any order that they give you, it will be riddled with mistakes to get you to take the bait. So the moment that you snap at that bait, you become a master baiter. They're masters at it.
I've been one of them for a long time.
No, it's basically, as I said to Caroline Stevens last night or the night before, I said, we've been believing in Santa Claus, and of course that went away, and we believe in the Tooth Fairy. But sadly, people still believe in the Tooth Fairy when it comes to the corporations that we call government. And that's gone on for so long now. We've got the Tooth Fairy. You don't start pulling your teeth out, because put them under your pillow, but the fines will still stand there unless you stand up and rebut them and do it properly. Now the common law court, I just got some communication from Caroline Stevens from the common law court in the UK, and the paperwork they've produced is absolutely fantastic. It was in relation to someone being unlawfully evicted, and they have to pay up to £5,000 and £6,000 fines each, and it's got lawful standing. So it's I don't know if I told you guys, but that's going to happen here in Australia, that the common law court in the UK is going to help us set up through Kevin Arnott, which set it up over there. And poor Kevin obviously hasn't come on. He's still having problems with communication outside the world, because when you're that big and you've removed a pope from office, you're going to upset a lot of people. And obviously he's upset the government, the corporation that calls themselves government. We've got to stop using these fictional words like legal and government. That's got to go. What do you reckon, Bill?
Well, I'll just read you an act here, Barry. The Auckland City and Auckland Museum Empowering Act, 1924. Okay, and it says an act to empower the corporation of the City of Auckland.
Yeah.
Okay, they're telling you that it is a corporation. In the legislation, everything, every council. Look, down to your, I don't know who dishes out pensions and that over there. What's the corporation in Australia that gives you?
Department of Social Security, I think. I'm not too sure.
Department of Social Security. Okay, they're a private company, Barry, and what they do, once you go in there and interact with them, they become agent for you. So if you go in and say, I'd like $100, they say, no, we'll give you $50. And so they go in to your trust fund and get $100. They give you $50 and they keep $50 as commission. Okay, now I wish people would realise this. I've been telling people this for years, but all these supposed government departments are only private companies. They're acting as agent. Now, if you know the agent-principal relationship, it is that the principal is the highest, bar none. There is no one higher than the principal. So when you go in to any of these departments and you say, could you explain our relationship? Is it an agent-principal relationship? If so, somehow I've given you a power of attorney, so you're acting as my agent. Could you tell me, does that make me the principal? Now, once you show them that you know your standing, the whole thing will change, because now all of a sudden, as principal, you can demand. Now, a young lady up in Brisbane, I think I've told you this, Barry, she went in and I told her to say, I'm the principal, but address the prosecutor, not the judge. The judge does not come into it. Address the prosecutor and say, I believe I'm the principal in this matter. Does that make you the agent? And bang, the whole thing changes. It flips it on its head.
This is assuming, though, that they actually understand what you're talking about. A lot of them don't.
Oh, you did right. Some of them are as thick as, yeah.
Yeah, two short planks, Bill, two short planks.
Indeed.
Yeah, go ahead, Mick. Have you got any questions?
How do we overcome that problem? Do we have to explain the law to them first?
Do it with the paperwork, Mike.
Right.
So I do everything with the paperwork, and I've got a good student there. Young Barry's really taken the ball and run with it, to which I applaud him. He's doing a great job over there, and you guys are lucky to have him. He's really pushing out on everything there. There's a few other good ones there too, some up in Queensland, and young Melissa down in Melbourne there.
Yeah.
Doing a great job. They've really taken the ball and run with it.
Yeah, Mick's doing a great job up there in Queensland, because Mick, you get out to a lot of people every week, don't you?
Oh yes, I do two podcasts. One is the Australian Patriot Radio, which I'm about to do after this one. That gets out to over 100,000 people every time we put one out. And my own podcast, I don't honestly know how many people it reaches, because it goes out on so many platforms.
Okay.
So you can get it on iTunes, on YouTube, you can get it on all sorts of platforms. So, but the word is getting out and it's spreading, and I'm getting an awful lot of people calling me up or messaging me. So obviously people are listening, so I'm grateful for that, because my job here is to try and help educate people. And if I'm getting a lot of reaction, it means I'm being successful at doing that.
Well, that's basically, Bill's been doing this for about 20, 30 years, and I've been only doing it for about 6.
Starting to show, Mike.
Yeah, well, bits keep falling off me too now.
And again, anybody watching this, I do put my email address up on the thing. If you're going to send me an email address, just make it 1 or 2 lines, because I will not read anything longer than that, because I haven't got time. And as far as Bill's concerned, Bill's snowed under with too much communication, and he just can't handle it. So keep it short, guys, if you want to get hold of us, right? Go ahead, Mike.
Same here, mate. I have the same problem. Every day I open up my emails. I've got at least 80 or 90 emails. And the first thing I do is go through and chuck out all the ones that are just irrelevant, advertising and stuff like that. Then I look at the headlines and see if it's worth opening to read. So if you have a good headline that's going to catch my attention, you're more likely to get your email read. Yeah. But if it's something boring, like read this, see you later. Yeah. It's in the bin.
And it's not that you don't want it. It's just, I'm retired. I'm 74, and Bill's retired, and of course you're only a young bloke up there in Queensland. But there's only so much you can do in a day, because to edit this now is going to take me about 2 or 3 hours. Not that we'll edit anything out of it. There's no rubbish in there, so it's just editing.
Yeah, we get rid of all the hums and ha's.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, Barry, is that a lot of people want personal help, and that's why I've been doing these. I've been doing these YouTubes now since 2011. I was the first to put stuff freely available on YouTube, and it took a lot of courage back then. I had to walk bow-legged back in those days. But what I've tried to do, the law is so complex. I've tried to break it down and show people the easiest way, but they become overwhelmed with it and want you to do everything for them. And that's not how it works. And you find once you get to a certain stage and you start helping people, more and more comes to you, because that's the way the universe works, is that the more you put out, the more you get back. So if you're putting out garbage, you'll get garbage back. If you're putting out love and peace and doing good, it'll come back in abundance. And so the people need to learn that what we're trying to do is help them. And sure, they're going to trip up. I did many times.
Really?
But at some stage, you lose that fear. And once you've lost that fear, they're helpless, and they know that.
Well, I had an email from a lady yesterday who wanted to buy my ebook, but she wrote to me and she said, if I buy your ebook, will you indemnify me if I lose? So I wrote back and said, you don't have to buy the ebook. You can just go into court and fight on your own if you want to, or even fight it before you get to court. I said, it's up to you. If you want to fight properly, then buy the ebook and see how it goes. But I can't indemnify you.
You should have said, I'd like you to get the same commitment from your lawyer.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a good point you brought up there, because basically the bottom line, like a VCAT thing, which you can go up to the fence or the bar table and talk on behalf of somebody, but in a court you can't. They have to know it themselves. So you can give them the paperwork, but they got to get on YouTube. It's all on Bill Turner's there, all the information, and you've got to have a basic knowledge how to speak for yourself and how to tell the court that you're not going to contract and you're not going to play games with them. That the whole thing is fiction. You're going to do it properly, and you don't need to learn Latin. You can do it very simply, and the paperwork. You see that the trouble is with courts, when you walk in there, you're automatically guilty. So the paperwork you put in beforehand changes everything. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. And, you know, what my ebook is all about is to try and show people that they can fight before it even gets to court.
Well, I think only fools and corporations go to court. And when we get this common law court set up here in the next few months, I did put a deadline on it for June or July, that all this will all end, and people who've been getting away with fictional, like, it's just, the whole thing is just annoying, and we'll start charging them in their private capacity. So what do you reckon, Bill? So you wouldn't recommend anybody to go to court unnecessarily, would you?
No. How do you spell it, Barry? Is it C-A-U-G-H-T?
Court.
Exactly. If you end up in court, you've been caught.
Well, there's no courts. He basically, it's just an invitation to do business on a foreign ship in dry dock, a vessel. So, you know, I don't want to be a sailor. I think I'm getting too old. I might get seasick of one in there. And definitely, when you put the paperwork in, you make them very, very sick indeed. They want to jump ship.
I want to get away from this a little bit because this morning I was just browsing through YouTube, and I came across a YouTube video just put up a couple of days ago by an Englishman called Harry Miller, how I won my court case against the Thought Police. And basically, the Thought Police called him up one day and said he wasn't there, so he had to call them back. And he said, "Why are you calling me?" And they said, "Well, we want to talk about some Twitter posts that you've made." And he said, "Have I committed a crime? No. So why are you calling me?" Anyway, it went on, and this guy was an ex-cop. So he got so annoyed by these Thought Police trying to shut him up that he took it to the High Court, and he won. And the judge actually said that the Thought Police were acting like the Gestapo, the Stasi, and the Cheka. I mean, that is a damning piece of rhetoric from a judge. So now it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and I know he will win again.
The only thing I would do different would be, I would say, do I not have the right to free speech?
Well, I don't ask questions. I tell them I have. Yeah, maybe you're a bit more.
The only reason The only reason I say that, Mike, is because when you make a claim, you have to prove it.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
true.
so when you ask a negative averment such as that, do I not have the right to free speech? It throws it straight back onto them, sort of like a porcupine question.
Yeah, good thought.
The knowledge of claim. It all comes down to the knowledge of claim and the claim of damage. Like gold miners put a stake in the ground, they make a claim. So you've got to put a stake in the court. I'd love to walk in there with a flag and place it on the 7 of the 5 levels, of course, but put a big flag in the corner there near that bar fence and see how many people would jump ship. That would be an interesting exercise.
Yeah, if you could get a flag in there. Bill, I'm a bit curious about this flag you're sitting in front of.
Yeah, the sovereignty flag.
Uh-huh.
It's the flag of the sovereign chiefs of New Zealand. It's still a recognise. You probably recognise a very similar one from the Union Steamship Company. Used the same flag. Very
I had an uncle. I was a captain on one of those ships.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
my family owned the Holt Shipping Company line in England.
Right. Well, it's still, although it hasn't been registered, and that's a bit of a problem, but it is still recognised worldwide. That's the sovereign chiefs of the northern part of New Zealand. That's their flag. But
Well, who would you have to register it with?
Beg your pardon?
Who would you have to register it with?
Oh, it is registered with the United Nations in 2004.
Apparently, someone just told me it's been registered with the United Nations in 2004. I didn't know that, but
Was there something, Bill?
What have they got to do with us?
Bill, there was something you didn't know. I mean, oh my God! I used to say I know everything except
I
that.
knew it.
No. Who was that?
She can come back anytime she likes.
Yeah. Move over, Bill.
yeah. All right. Well, I think we'd just about wrap that up, Barry. Or
Okay, then we'll wrap up there. Okay, guys, I'd like to thank Bill and Mike. Mike again up in Queensland, Bill in New Zealand, and I'm in Melbourne, the centre, the brains of the world. Not mine. Anyway, thank you guys for coming on, and thank all the people around the world who subscribe to both of us. And I think Bill's put his finger up. He wants to say hi to something else before he runs away. Go.
No, you missed one. You only thanked 2 of us.
Yes.
But should I thank myself? I thank, that beautiful lady there. Yes, of course. Thank you. She's already made a very interesting statement, which I'm sure will be interesting to a lot of people. And thank her as well.
What's her name?
Monica Eastick. I'm half Australian. And
Which half?
I won't tell you which half, Mike.
She told me, and I really understood that.
Oh, it was nice to meet you, Monica.
Nice to meet you too.
And Bill.
Okay.
It's time to go, Jenny. No need to close the door. What if the dust gets in the house? Doesn't matter anymore. You and the dust have been at war for far too many